Hey, what is going on, y'all? Thanks for watching the channel. Make sure you like and subscribe. Matt Smith here as always. Coach Prime's Tuesday presser was today. We heard from him for the first time since the post game at Central Florida there in Orlando. Some interesting stuff. Coach Prime spent the bye week in Texas, rested, recharged, and you can definitely tell that he has more energy. In fact, he said that all the other coaches, it's a little harder on them because when he comes back fired up. And you could see that today. He's definitely pumped up. And judging based upon the well off media videos the last couple of days, he's certainly dialing the team back in and getting the wheels turning again after, having to shut her down there for the first time, at least this season, mid-season, their first bye week. They do have another one coming up in just about a month. They've got 3 games. They're playing Kansas State on Saturday night. Then they're in Tucson, at Arizona, and then they're home against Cincinnati, and they'll have another bye week. Coach Prime said this bye week was a good time to kind of shut her down for a lot of the guys, though, because they were banged up. So he said while he wishes they could have continued their momentum, at the same time, it's a good thing to kind of hit the pause button, get a little mental reset, little physical reset, get the bodies some rest. And, he's having trouble with guys like the Kai Hill Green and Levante Bentley, who are a little dinged up themselves at linebacker, just trying to get them to take time to rest and recover during the week. So certainly I imagine, not just for those two, but for a lot of other guys on this team, it was important to have that little downtime over that week off. Other news and notes from the press conference today. Sounds like maybe some more conversations were held for red shirts. He didn't really want to share any specifics on that. Kind of expect that, though. That's the nature of college football today. Did get to hear from Rick George today about the future of what college athletics looks like following the preliminary kind of ruling in the House settlement about revenue sharing, kind of transitioning and bringing all the NIL in-house to make sure it's university approved as the schools are trying to take the power back from the student athletes, right? And, one thing I didn't have a chance to ask Rick George about today was just if the student athletes themselves have the correct representation in all of these battles, because you see these fights with Congress and it's Nick Saban and you've got coaches up there, but, who's representing the players? There's no college football players union. I nominate Jeremy Bloom. That's the guy that I would love to see do it. And, they definitely need representation. And it kind of feels like, it's kind of going to go by the wayside and they're going to eventually have to play ball with what happens. But they don't even know what the governance system looks like. The NCAA has not made things clear, according to Rick George. So just a lot of murky waters going forward. It's one of those situations where you will see some schools just straight up have to cut sports because they're not going to be able to afford to kind of allocate the money to, all different sports. Rick George was adamant that that is not what Colorado is going to do whatsoever, and they're going to avoid that the best they possibly can. As it relates to, everything else Rick George mentioned, it's a mess right now, the world of college sports. There's politicians and, congressmen and lawyers just determining what it's going to look like, college athletics, that is, in the future. And I hope we have the right people there, and I hope at the end of the day we come up with a good product, because it's almost like every other day right now you're hearing about another story in college sports that could be coming out that's going to change everything. It was just another one the other day about how there could be like a 70-team ultra league, and they're all divisions that are broken up by regions to reintroduce some more of the rivalry and some more of the regionality back into it. But I have no idea what it's going to look like. And I do not envy the position that Rick George is in right now whatsoever, because, and this is a question I asked him today, is your job more complicated now than it was when you got it? And of course, he was hired back in, I think it was 2012. The point is it's an easy answer. It's obviously more complicated. Things are extremely complex, and there's tons of balls in the air right now that, who knows where they're going to end up landing, quite frankly, and what structure it's going to look like at the end of the day. But what we do know is the current version of college athletics is not going to be the long-term version, and whatever they come in with to replace it, who knows how long that lasts. It's just kind of all up in the air right now, and one thing that the schools are pushing for is regulation, regulation, regulation. We need rules. We need guidelines. We need to understand from your perspective what is and what isn't allowed. And, with some of this NIL, they're trying to take the power back from the players. If you want to do revenue sharing, great, but we're going to have a say-so on who is contributing and who is not contributing, which I think you're going to weed out some of the riffraff, but the primary goal for the schools and the presidents and the NCAA is to get things back under their, under their foot, really, because it hasn't been the last couple of years, and to them that's terrifying. And right now players have all the power, and certainly we do need some rules and regulations, and we need to clean things up. I just hope that from a player's perspective, they have adequate representation in the matter. That's the bulk of what we heard and the most important stuff from what we heard of Rick George. And a lot of that is going to have to, deal with what the media rights deals look like moving forward. It's a big complicated mess that it's a lot of technical jargon right now. And hopefully once we find like a unilateral resolution here and we figure out what we're going to be doing here moving forward, they can make it easily digestible for fans. Because I think that's one thing that fans are kind of turned off by, is that we don't really understand what the sport is supposed to look like and the structure of it moving forward. So how are we supposed to keep up with it? It's already hard enough to keep up with everybody, swapping schools and moving locations in the transfer portal. I mean, for the love of God, every year you got to learn a new team and a whole new bunch of players, and it doesn't, I think, for the casual fan, until the games start going, it's not really, there's no point to really learn who some of these guys are, because they're there, maybe they're not there. Did they transfer? Did they stay? Did they redshirt? It's a mess. So they definitely have to get some things ironed out, and I just hope that in doing so, the players are still adequately represented, and it's going to be a legal mess here moving forward for a little while. As far as the other stuff Coach Prime told us, sounds like, to go back to that red shirt comment, sounds like there are some other red shirts. Coach Prime is saying, look, I mean, that puts us in a tricky spot too. We talked about with Trevor Woods and with Jeremiah Brown how that's essentially their, third and fourth linebackers that they're now going to have to replace with Jalen Wester and with Johnny Chaney. So we'll see how that moves going forward. And against Kansas State, a team that does have a big tight end, that would have profiled to be a game that I would imagine you would have probably used Trevor Woods a lot in, and now that changes your game plan and your dynamic. But to that tune, Shiloh Sanders returns. He's out of the yellow jersey we can see on the Well-Off Media videos, and he's back to practice after breaking the forearm, which is great to see for Shiloh. This is the last go round, and certainly, he's a thumper. And if you're going to be without Trevor Woods, having a guy like that in the mix, so you can maybe be a little bit flexible with Carter Stoutmire, who's played really well in Shiloh's stead. And Coach Prime today talked about how Carter Stoutmire is still going to be used in packages. Maybe he becomes that Trevor Woods, dime backer type of role. Last year, they put an extra DB on the field because they felt that was their best option. Maybe they end up doing that moving forward. I think it'll probably be matchup based, game by game, and due to injury. So, or potential injury, I should say. So we'll see what happens there. Let's see. Other things from Coach Prime. Just talked about being dialed in, making sure the guys understand they haven't accomplished anything yet. They're 4-1, but as we've been talking about, to use his line, a fan only blows when you're hot. I mean, if you don't keep winning, this thing can change just as fast as it turned good. It can go bad, right? And that's just kind of the nature of the business and of sports. It's a fickle business. It's a what have you done for me lately league. Every one of them, they are. So you've got to continue on this trajectory, and they know it. They've got a very good football program coming in here on Saturday night in Kansas State. It's going to be a late one. It's going to be a late one. They know that too, and the crowd should be electric for that. It will have been almost 3 weeks since the Buffs have been at home, and everybody's going to come out and get a chance to see Colorado again, coming off the biggest win of Coach Prime's tenure down there in Orlando. I imagine everyone's going to be thrilled to see the boys again. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the atmosphere, especially another national game. And we heard that Arizona's going to be a national game. Afternoon kickoff on Fox. Going to be a hot one, but it's Tucson. I mean, in the fall. It's Tucson, not in December. You just naturally assume outside of that 1 month a year, you're probably going to get a hot day, and it sounds like we will. But look, it'll be an afternoon kickoff, which will be good for everybody back here, especially coming off a real late one like we're going to have this weekend. So some really interesting stuff here moving forward for Colorado. The other thing, Coach Prime really just talking about not being surprised, right? Not being surprised that they're 4-1. Hey, this is the standard, by the way. When I came in, when I talked about dominating, when I talked about winning, playing like that, this is exactly what I'm talking about right here. The performance that we just showed at UCF, it's time to replicate that. And how do you kind of wrap that up and bring it home with you, kind of put it on ice for a week and then bring it back out and ramp it back up? That's the task that they're faced with right now. And it's going to be a good learning experience because they, like I mentioned, have to do it again here in about a month, in about a month's time. And you definitely want to have a smooth process, shutting her down and ramping her back up. And I think they do. And Coach Prime said, look, I'm a man of faith, not a man of worry, which is essentially saying I'm a man of faith, having faith in my team that everybody's going to be focused, everybody's going to be dialed in. And I've seen the well off media videos. He's made sure that everybody understands that there is so much more work to be done. They're just scratching the surface really this year. You've got your toughest games here coming down the stretch, and Kansas State. That's a team that's 4-1. That's a team that's coming off a bye with a really good coaching staff. They're going to have a great plan. And I don't know if you've seen any of Chris Kleinman, their head coach's comments this week, talking about how Shador will be the number one pick off the board. Good to see that he knows ball. He recognizes ball. He says, he doesn't really get confused. You can throw whatever you want at him, and he's got a great grasp of offense and of defenses, and that's what we've heard from Coach Prime repeatedly. That Shador has started so many games, every game of his college career and every game of his high school career. I'm pretty sure that's a lot of football. That's a lot of different coverages. It's a lot of different defenses. That's something that he has a very good handle on. Very cool to see Chris Kleinman acknowledge that. The head coach there at Kansas State also talked about just how dynamic Colorado is on the outside, and they know they have their hands full with what Colorado can present to them, and it's going to be a big challenge for the Wildcats coming into Folsom Field on Saturday night. Other news and notes from Coach Prime. Asked about facing Dylan Edwards, he says, I'm not facing Dylan Edwards. We're not facing Dylan Edwards. We're facing Kansas. Dylan Edwards just plays on that team. And he talked about how he has love for Dylan Edwards. For me personally, I have a hard time wanting to hate on Dylan. I like Dylan a lot. Dylan is a wonderful young man. And as Coach Prime said today, he left on the right terms. And when guys leave on the right terms, meaning you leave the program, you have a plan of where you're going to go, you're making the best decision for you and your family, doing what's going to make you happy, make you comfortable, and not to mention set yourself up for success. That's what Dylan did. Coach Prime has known Dylan for a very long time, and he's very supportive of that. It's, some of the guys, as he mentioned today, who leave the program and then say things, and he called it shoot back, that look, I mean, he even shows them love, but why would you do that? It just doesn't make you look good. There's almost never a scenario where that's to the player's benefit, right? So he acknowledged that, Dylan left the right way, and it's all love between, him and Dylan Edwards, and he wishes him nothing but the best, as he does all the rest of the players who have come through the program over the years, specifically these last two while he's been at Colorado, no doubt about it. Other things to note, really shared a cool story about his third grade hustle today, about how he was about 7 or 8 years old, used to go to Kansas City Royals games and go down by the players, get balls from batting practice and catch, home run balls. And then, in the batting cages, help pick up. And then he would sell the crack bats and balls at the Royals games. And that was his little hustle, he called it, as a third grader. Very cool story. I've got that up as a clip on the YouTube channel. Check it out. Again, like and subscribe. All the content really helps me out. Gratefully appreciated. Other news and notes from Coach Prime specifically, a lot of this, the media may be surprised, but we're not surprised. I don't think that he is. This is the plan. However, it's clear it's starting to come to fruition in a more real, tangible way than it has in the past. And even he acknowledged as much. He talked about how it's tremendous to see the growth since the second half of the Nebraska game, right? He talked about how it's a really good thing that Colorado is starting to stack these games, but just because they have doesn't mean that they can get overconfident or, to use his word, lackadaisical. They've got to stay on it. They've got to be locked in, and he certainly is making sure that everybody is aware of that throughout the course of this week. Other things, kind of was baited into getting asked whether or not he or Travis Hunter were a better athlete. He says, look, I mean, it's not me versus. He knows that if he says anything there, it's a big clip, and that's not something you want out there. You want the focus to be on Travis Hunter. He called himself the old boxing coach in the corner, right? Shout out left, right, that type of stuff. So I thought that was a good moment. And he said, he didn't directly call out Georgia, and the reason he brought it up, I think maybe just ironic and coincidental timing, but at the very same time, it should be acknowledged that I think a lot of the way that people think about Colorado's program isn't accurate. They don't have kids that get in trouble. They've got the highest GPA in program history. Meanwhile, you look, and I can say this, look at what happened again at Georgia's program today. What is going on, Kirby Smart? Get a handle. Get your house in order, right? Figure out what's going on with these young men in your program. This is a pattern now. I mean, how many arrests have there been down in Athens since the beginning of last season? It is a disturbing number for some disturbing reasons. Kirby Smart definitely needs to get his house in order. And Coach Prime said, look, I mean, can you imagine if just like one of those incidents happened here? What the narratives would be, what the storylines would be. That's what he's talking about. And quite frankly, from a national perspective, we here give him credit for it, but from a national perspective, nobody really talks about that. And it is impressive. It is impressive that they have the highest GPA for the program in school history. That is really cool stuff, right? I mean, yeah, Travis Hunter's the Heisman, but oh, by the way, he's also got a 4.0 GPA. The kid's a star, right? And they've got a lot of those different players in the program that probably don't get their just due because they're overshadowed by a couple of guys. And I think we do our best to promote them, but it's not easy when you've got a lot to get to. So certainly, they deserve a lot of credit as a program, as a staff, as advisors, as academic advisors for getting these young men on the right path and headed in the right direction. Um, Other things from Coach Prime, just talking about being happy they got the ground game going and being excited for the challenge that awaits on Saturday night. And they expect to have success. They expect to win this football game now. I think they're going to have a very good game plan, and he knows they have to build on what they've shown so far. And, outside of that, today he was in a good mood today coming back. He was definitely charged up. Other things that I should mention here. He was asked if he's noticed a tune change in, national media. He's like, yeah, people tell me about that. I got my people for that let me know what people are saying. And for my purposes, I definitely like to know what is said out there about us. But he doesn't have time to pay attention. Quite frankly, I mean, maybe for his own personal reasons, but that stuff doesn't matter. Maybe for his own personal reasons about should I or should I not support that person or go on their show or, I got to know, I got to make sure that person keeps the same energy if they have a really big platform and they're talking about me. That's his perspective. And, to each their own, I guess. I don't really have a problem with it. I think it is important to understand what's being said about you. So that's pretty much the presser recap. I'll have a little bit more content here later this week coming out. Certainly, I'm working on guests and have some surprise names that you may not expect, but you'll be very happy to see. So make sure you're liking and subscribing to all the content. Got a bunch of clips up there for everybody. Let me know what you're thinking in the comments here. Colorado and Kansas State now. This is a big one. 2 4-1 teams. This is potential massive Big 12 implications for the winner and, quite frankly, for the loser of this game, although it's not indicative of what's going to happen the rest of the year because it's just 1 week. But, of course, you add those up and they all matter in the end, and everyone is just as important as the next for this Colorado program. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe as always. Talk to you soon.